launch, doesn't it? We are about to go live, and I'm going to begin by saying hello, 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 and welcome to the TecQuipment YouTube live session that we hold every week on YouTube and Instagram. This is where you have the opportunity as a viewer to join in and ask your questions to both our guests and to Digital Dave. Joining me today, I've got Oliver Shaw. Are you there, Oliver?
I'm here.
Brilliant. Good, good, good. So Oliver is from Trafford College, and he'll be talking to us as our guest today. And then we also have Digital Dave from his home office as well.
Hiya.
How are you today, Dave?
I'm good, thanks, Dion. I'm good, thank you.
Good, good, good. Right, okay. So first, let's start off by telling everybody what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking to Oliver. One of the hot topics is COVID-19. How are universities and colleges coping with returning both academics and students? What plans have they got in place? Oliver's already got some students back this week doing practical work. We're also going to be talking about why is it important for students not to postpone their education. So we'll be covering that with Oliver shortly, and talking a little bit more about him as a person, his career, his education. It should provide some inspiration. He's a really driven individual. Throughout that, we'll have our very own Digital Dave. One of the topics that I have on my list to talk about today is engines. We will be talking more on that tomorrow in our webinar on engines. But do remember, this is your opportunity to ask your questions. So if you've got practical teaching and engineering questions, it might be related to theory, it might be related to specific pieces of equipment, TecQuipment equipment, then do post them here. We have some amazing experts on the line, although they probably don't appreciate me using the word expert, specialists, however you like to term yourselves, gentlemen. And do let us know where you are watching from. I will be monitoring the live chat over on my other screen over here and be feeding that back to everybody. So Oliver, let's start off with you. Oliver, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself, what you do at Trafford College as a starting point, if that's okay, please.
Yes, no problem. Well, I work at Trafford College, and I'm in charge of a higher education engineering department. It's started to become a bit of we've got a head of HE engineering and a head of FE engineering, and the backbone posts were created back 2 years ago when they merged the college with Stockport College, and it's soon to merge with another one, and became the Trafford College Group. It was apparent that the HE provision needed to be centralised to abide by government guidelines, government funding, and things like the Office for Students that moderate everything we do. So with the higher education department, for the past few months, we've been really focusing on making sure that we have a blended learning model to cope with the current circumstances. But my trip into this position right now is quite a different one than what people normally take, because we did start off with my family business when I first left school, and started my education in engineering, which what I was directed to, wisely I might add, by my dad. He created the business, well, started it in 1978, a few years before I was born. So you're starting to work out how old I am. I'm not quite 40 yet. I've got the hair that says I'm quite 40, but I'm not quite 40 yet. So my dad worked in research and development in the automotive industry prior to opening his business. Opened his business in 1997. I left high school, so you'll know definitely how old I am now. And my dad guided me wisely into engineering. And the reason why that was that cars were starting to change. We'd gone away from simplistic mechanical systems that over the past 20 years to a more multi-system function, where instead of just having 4 or 5 systems on a car that kept the engine running, you started getting to the 20s, 40s and 50 types of systems Now you can, there's upwards of 200 systems that keeps an engine running at one time. So it was apparent that engineering was the subject knowledge that you needed to assist you in the motor vehicle industry. I went into the engineering at Regenerative College, where I did a level 3 GMBQ in engineering, first of all. And then I moved into a higher national diploma in mechanical engineering. When I left the mechanical engineering courses, the HND and the level 3, I'd also been working part-time at my dad's garage. When I left the HND, I started working at the garage full-time, and that continued for some years. In 2004, I think it was, my dad had a heart attack, and he took a bit of a sideline while he recuperated, and I got to the quickly thrust upon me position of running the family business, which had grown to be quite substantial around that time. From then, we took over family business, and my brothers started working there. Along with the good guidance that I had of going into engineering, they also got given that guidance and went into learning engineering at Regenerative College as well. When at Regenerative College, they were working part-time at the garage, where I was running it full-time, which we expanded the business into more of an engine tuning, as well as regular vehicle maintenance, amongst other sideline engineering businesses as well. So it became apparent that the engineering aspect of the motor vehicle industry was at the forefront of our business development. And that is where the business really started to grow. Because as cars started to get more complicated and more systems started to get put into vehicles, it became apparent that you couldn't just be the traditional car mechanic. You needed both engineering skills and motor vehicle skills to enable you to work on the newer vehicles. So after running the business up until 2008, we'd trained various apprentices. My brothers had finished college, and they wanted to take a more forefront position in running the company. And it was at that time when one of the assessors who came out to the company to assess the apprentices that we had put the idea of me doing a bit of teaching up, which immediately was a great shock to me, to be honest. I thought, first of all, what? Me teaching? I thought, no way, that's not me. No, I can't. I'm not a teacher type. I'm industry. I don't teaching. No, because I'd had the excellent education from some of my lecturers at Wigan College. There's no way I could ever live up to something like that. So at first I was a bit taken back, and I thought, should I do it? Should I not? But I did want to change. My first for running the business had dried up, and I wanted something else in my life. So the next day after the assessor had been, I got a phone call from the head of the department, then a gentleman called Gareth Sutton. Gareth Sutton rang me up and says, Oliver, I wonder if you'd be interested in doing some teaching. Well, yeah, somebody actually mentioned that to me. He said, come down to the college and have a chat. So I goes into the college and meets up with him and a couple of lecturers, doing the appropriate processes. And then he says, right, okay, there's a classroom down there, and I want you to, well, if you would, go in and just spend an hour and a half teaching about exhaust systems, gas circulation systems. Okay, really? Right now? Well, yeah, see how you feel. So first I was a little apprehensive, but went into the classroom and had all these eager faces staring at me, and quickly went, oh my God, what am I doing here? I was, thinking, I just want to run back to my business. Instantly, I started to discuss some of the aspects about exhaust systems and that were in fashion at that time, which was, part of the curriculum. And after about 10 minutes, this natural flow evolved where I started talking about my personal experience and the technical aspects of exhaust systems, and they were asking me questions and I was giving them answers, and I started to really enjoy it. The first thing I remember was after an hour and a half, I was exhausted. If anybody, and I expect some parents have actually realised this, how hard teaching actually is.
I'm definitely close.
Yeah, people, oh yeah, it's teaching, you know, you got holidays, you need some of them holidays after it. Now, after an hour and a half, I was drained. I was absolutely exhausted. But I walked out that room with a smile and what I felt like was a new glow. So much so the lecturer said, I think you enjoyed that, didn't you? Oh, yeah, I did. That was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. He says, well, I'll give you some feedback next time you're in on how it went. He said, it did go brilliantly. He says, but what you need to do is you need to get you on your CertEd course now and start learning how to teach and learning how to go through the correct procedures in teaching. You've obviously got the subject content and you've got a lot to share. Do you want it? And my first reaction was, yes, I do. This is what I want to do. And I knew from that day forward that I would be in education. So after that, I went home. I think I went for a pint first to get over the hour and a half exhaustion that I had of trying to teach. And then I thought, right, okay, we're going to go into this. The following week went in and I did a couple of sessions, started on the CertEd course, spent 2 years doing my CertEd course. Then while I'm doing the CertEd course, I started, well, Oliver, you got an H&D in engineering, haven't you, as well? So I jumped onto the end, started teaching engineering design, which meant 2 days teaching, which then went to 3 days teaching and 4 days teaching and into 5 days teaching. And well, only five days a week. And then that's when Regenerative College said to me, would you sign a full-time contract to us to teach full-time? And that was it then, hooked and in education. And then there's a lot of development then afterwards. Do you want me to go into that now, or do you want to talk about
hold on back for a few minutes, Oliver. It's really, really good to hear about how you got into it, and how you've kind of gone from college to your family business and into education and taking on these challenges. And we can talk about those other challenges shortly. And we want to talk about COVID-19 as well, students. So we're going to talk about that as well. I'm going to give you a bit of a break. You can go and do some boxing or whatever, or just chill out.
Oh, yes. You've noticed the boxing glove collection, haven't you?
Go and do some exercise, ready to be fresh and ready to go again in a couple of minutes.
No problem.
So we're going over to Dave Giddings now.
Hi there.
Hopefully Dave's not eating a pickled egg and a
No. Who would do that? Who would do that live?
Who would do that? Come on. Of course, it would be Dave, but not on this instance. Digital Dave is here with us today. And Dave, how are you feeling today? How's the painting going? Have you got a new painting project?
Oh, yeah. I found something else to paint. I'm painting chairs outside.
Brilliant. What's your colour of choice? Is it blue still?
It's cornflower blue.
Oh, of course.
If you run out of things to paint, Dave, I've got a couple of rooms that need doing.
Oh, no, only external only.
Oh, all right.
All right. Okay, Dave, I want to talk about engines today. Tomorrow we've got a webinar where we're talking about practical teaching of engines and theory, and we're talking about automotive mechanics, and we'll have Oliver with us as well, sharing the experience with that. Now, I want to particularly think about understanding actually how can you test different engines? What do we offer there, very briefly? And a bit of an overview of kind of the different ends. You know, we've got and stuff.
To test engines, we can offer 2 engine test sets, Dion. We've got the TD200, and that's a platform that you can mount our single-cylinder diesel or petrol engines onto. It has a water-based dynamometer, so we can load up the engines. We can look at the performance, the efficiencies, the air consumption, fuel consumption, speed, torque and power, and all the efficiencies on that. So it's a very, very straightforward, easy to use piece of kit. Then we can move on to the more complex TD300. There you can see a screenshot there. That's a regenerative engine. They are bigger engines. They're still single cylinder, petrol, gasoline, but it's got a dynamometer there that acts as a motor to start the engine. Then once it's running, it then acts as a dynamometer, so we can load up the engine, like going up a hill in your car, and we can see the performance of that engine. We can modify the engines to include a pressure transducer, and a crank angle encoder. So that's our ECA bundle. Then we can actually see what's happening inside the cylinder. So we can look at the pressure against the crank angle and the volume against the crank angle. So we'll go into a little bit more detail about that tomorrow when we pull up some diagrams and so on. So that's what we can do regarding internal combustion engines.
Great, and then we're going to be talking about gas turbines as well during that session.
We are, yeah.
Right, good. Well, that was brief. I'm going to hop back to Oliver. Because Oliver, I want to talk about your ongoing education and stuff in a minute. But first of all, I'm really keen to talk about the current restrictions of teaching under COVID-19. Now, you've already got students that have returned back this week.
Yes.
Would you be able to share kind of your approach there at Trafford College, what you're doing and how you're going to be moving forward?
Yeah, no problem. Well, the learners that we've got back this week are the learners that have a necessity to take part in practical assessments. If there is an alternative way of continuing education at the moment, we are going down that route, i.e. blended learning models, which we've been running since September last year. We started blended learning using the Microsoft Teams early before Christmas, with the foresight of doing more remote learning due to industry demand. This has became very useful all of a sudden in March when it came, but the COVID pandemic meant that all the government buildings had to shut and the college buildings had to shut. So thankfully, the higher education students had a seamless transition into blended learning entirely and allowed to continue their learning, and which we've all been extremely happy with. And we've had some fantastic results. They've all completed. So that's an amazing achievement from staff. That goes for the level 3 learners as well, who have a majority theoretical with blended, but require some more taught tuition. That has also worked well. If there's any practical assessments that needed to do for the level 3s, mainly the ones that are on apprenticeships, because they have endpoint plans and gateway plans where they have to achieve in a certain time, or it's going to take that next qualification or that next stage in education onto another year. So people who've got a necessity to have to complete their testing, their practical tests, practical assessments, we've managed to get them in this week, and along with any level 2s that have to complete assessments. Luckily, a lot of the teaching, practically wise, was covered leading up to COVID. On Monday, we had our first set group of learners back in since the lockdown. These plans for getting the learners back in started some time ago. If you remember, the government said they had to achieve these 5 steps before we would lift the lockdown and progress to the next step. Luckily, it wasn't that long ago that actually happened, and all the planning that we'd put in place for when it happened came to fruition on Monday. We did have an aim at getting them back at the beginning of June, if you remember. It was alluded to in early May that we're going to start getting people back in at the beginning of June, and people are going to be allowed to come back into education establishments under heavy restriction. That wasn't a really feasible deadline that the government gave, so they decided hold off another 2 weeks till the correct steps have been put in place. It did give us time to change the infrastructure of the college to allow for people to come back in, i.e.
Changes have you done, Oliver? Sorry to interrupt you. What are those specific changes that you've implemented to make this possible and safe for everybody?
Yeah, the changes on the infrastructure have been incorporating one-way systems. Yeah. Now, the guidelines that we've had by the government and the restrictions that we've had is that you can only have so many people in such a size area. So if you've got a small classroom, you could only possibly have 2 learners in and a member of staff. Larger classrooms to have a few more learners and a member of staff. Luckily, we've got a very big workshop at Trafford College, so that allowed us to have a few more learners in the workshop to be able to undertake assessments. Like I said, all that's within a one-way system that's been put into the college. Also, the social distancing has to be maintained of 2 meters.
Yeah.
Also, regulations on what people are touching. And you've got to apply a lot of common sense to this. If somebody is in a workshop and be using a set of a piece of equipment, a hammer, let's say, and that person picks up a hammer and then he's finished using it, somebody else isn't allowed to come over and pick that hammer up, because any potential germs or any spread can be caused by that transition in that piece of equipment. So we have to have a clean down process between learners using a piece of equipment and the next one.
Right.
So yeah, so there's been calculations done by the head of site and the health and safety directors, who work out exactly who can go in what rooms, how many, when, and how they can go into them rooms.
Right. I asked this on Instagram, but I'm going to ask it again now. Are you teaching in kind of bubbles, or I guess at nurseries they have bubbles, don't they? And
yeah.
Well, we have to be 2 meters apart, however many they can fit in the class. If you're in a little village school like my kids, they can probably fit about 8 in there. But
yeah. Well, work at this, we've got to stick within the 2 meter restriction. So if you say we're working in bubbles, as long as you're 2 meters apart, and as long as you fit within the amount of people in per square meterage of space,
right,
and that's what restricts everything we're doing right now.
okay.
And how many people can be in that building at any one time as well. You know, the one-way system solved a lot of issues, so we've not got people going back across each other.
Yeah.
Instance, if you leave one room and go to another, you're all going around the same way.
Right.
And you have to be mindful to the fact that we have got the restrictions in place and we have to abide them. And that is why the only people that are coming in is through absolute necessity and not through like a choice, if you will.
Yeah,
there is alternative ways to learn.
So you've got me back in, or
I haven't yet. No, it's there's a duty manager cycle where there's obviously a manager on site per day, and that rotates as well. So the same person isn't going to be in more than one circumstance within that week. So there's some very clever management for registers, making sure that we know who's on site at any one time, and making sure that people don't drift off site and back onto site without anybody knowing. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess many universities and colleges around the world are thinking, how can they deal with this? So I think some of those things that you mentioned today might give people some food for thought, further ideas. I'm sure they're already working on plans, but it's always good to share what insight you've gained yourselves, and particularly as you're already bringing people into the building now. In a minute, I'm going to come back to you, Oliver, and talk about why students, in your opinion, should have a gap year, why they really still need to push forward with their education. I'm going to give you a moment's break to think about that, and we're going to hop back to Dave.
No problem.
There you are, Dave. Right.
Here I am.
Dave, back onto engines now. I want to talk about gas turbines.
Okay.
And in what kind of courses are we going to be covering gas turbines? I guess if you're doing a regular automotive engineering course, maybe something that Oliver might have taught in the past, would you cover gas turbines in there? Or are you just at 4-stroke engines and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in laboratories. I mean, in Derby, where we've both been, Dion. We can walk the corridor in Derby University. On the right-hand side, they've got the gas turbine that you've seen. They've got the TD200 engine test set, but equally on the left-hand side, they've got the 10-meter flume that we've seen. So, yeah, I come across gas turbines in the most unusual labs that you wouldn't think they're relevant. For the most part, overseas, though, Dion, I have installed these in kind of what you might call Top Gun schools. So in Bangladesh, in Jashore, the Bangladesh Air Force Academy, the Algerian Air Force, in Saudi Arabia, we installed for British Aerospace at the Dammam compound. So yeah, every country has got a different name on the door, if you like, but they all fall under machines and engines.
What's the entry level one here? I know this is not really entry level kit, but if you're going to start with
Well, I'd go with the GT100. This allows like detailed experiments. It shows how a single shaft gas turbojet works. It tests its performance. We can also fit the afterburner, the reheat, which is the GT100 RS. This is a very dynamic piece of kit. It uses real life Jet A1 fuel, so it doesn't use propane, which is just inherently dangerous. And a spark ignites some extra fuel into the exhaust, and we see that extra bit of thrust. It's real life piece of kit. But we'll talk more about the gas turbine tomorrow. But entry level GT100.
Brilliant. All right. Thank you, Dave.
Okay.
I'm going to hop back over to Oliver now. Oliver, we've been having chats about what your perspective is on students thinking about, maybe, do I not bother going to university or college this year? Shall I have a year out because I don't know what my learning experience is going to be like? What's your perspective on that?
Well, my perspective on gap years. Now, why do people take a gap year out of education? It's usually to obtain some cultural diversity, and I want to go on tour of the world. I want to go around the different countries in the world. I go doing whatever somewhere else, going working for somewhere to get experience in that. Now, at the moment, what are the options? With the restrictions that are currently in place at the moment, touring the world it's not really a possibility at this moment in time. And how many worthwhile employment opportunities are going to be available over the next 12 months? Now, if you're leaving school or you're moving from a level 3 to a HE program or from H&D to a degree, and you're thinking about taking a gap year, it's a large amount of time at a very critical point of your life, in my opinion. And if you're going to take a gap year, it has to be worthwhile what you're doing. You can't just take it as a holiday, because it's a lot of time that you could be gaining knowledge and experience while being in education. Now, gap years, it's not something I've ever thought about wanting to do, because I want to make every year that I have count towards something, and that is my future, and enjoying what I do now. So if anybody's thinking, well, is it going to be worthwhile going to education, or should I have a year out? I would strongly recommend not having a year out under these present circumstances. I'd be thinking take chances of having the time to study and having all this brand new online learning content and all these blended models of learning and all these new opportunities that colleges are providing to learn a different way, so that you can progress your education into a career. And then you've got plenty of time for going touring the world once you've got a very successful job. Ultimately, what's your aim of your career is to get an excellent experience and into a good job that's going to provide you with the lifestyle that you want.
I think it's perspective, actually, Oliver, how you say you're very much putting a positive spin on it, because it's not about what is being taken away from the learning experience. It's about what is now being offered.
Yes.
Very au fait with this kind of online teaching and even meetings like we're doing and streaming today. So we'll have an increased skill set, but we're also upping our game, aren't we, in terms of
course, yes, and
being more flexible. We were talking on Instagram earlier about students who might be working for a company down south, for example, but they still need to go to college, and you don't have to worry about traveling anymore. There's many barriers are eliminated from being able to home learn. We've got, well, for instance, at Trafford College within HE, 98% of our higher education learners are employed within engineering. Now, a lot of them companies employ people all over the country. You know, it's the national countries, some international. So they've been asking us, we need this blended learning model for years, and which is why we put it into early practice to get it up and running. I wish now, and I had an excellent education when I did my H&Ds. I wish I had the opportunity to be able to access blended learning like we have now. When I was at college, I wish we had this type of technology that we have now that allows us to do things like this and allows us to access information so freely and have different types of learning. And it is available. So I think
if you're thinking about having a gap year, it's not the best time to be having one. You want to be taking what opportunities you've got now, which is an expanding industry, excellent resources being provided by college, liaison with companies like Trafford College, with TecQuipment, like with Siemens, with Amazon, with United Utilities, Northwest Electrical, and because we're all working together to provide learners with the most positive and proactive experience in learning. So gap years, it's a bit of a waste of time at the moment.
And in terms of doing practical, well, you've already said you've got students in this week. So you've got this blended learning where you can do online teaching, whether it's pre-recorded or whether it's actually interactive sessions. But then you're still accommodating people because, of course, if you're teaching engineering, practical is a very important element to that.
At the moment, we're in the cuts of doing the timetabling for September.
Right.
And at the moment, you know, I'd love to have that crystal ball, but I don't know anyone who's got one, and I certainly don't. So to be able to see what restrictions we're going to have in September, we just don't know. But what we can do is prepare for what we have now and then adjust what we're doing in between now and September. And then again, we might adjust again at Christmas, depending on what restrictions we have then. But is our priority is that all learners will have some face-to-face, as in a college contact.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's going to be available to them. Yes, we have learners that do the entire thing remotely from down south, but they've got a practical experience in the workplace. But all learners will have some face-to-face timetabled in September. At the moment, we're thinking it's going to be, they're in the morning, but it's blended learning in the afternoon, or vice versa. So there's plenty of models that we're looking at, and which is going to abide by regulations that may be in place, but making sure that learners have the best and most positive experience that they can have.
Brilliant. That's really, really good to hear. Thank you, Oliver. I'm going to hop back over to Dave now. And I'm going to remind everybody who's watching live to do let us know who you are and where you're from. If you've got any questions for Digital Dave. Dave, I want to talk about VDAS quickly. Versatile data acquisition. For those who don't know the acronym that we keep throwing around. Let me pull it up on the screen. Dave, VDAS, how important is the use of VDAS generally for understanding theory for practical teaching?
Well, it's helpful. VDAS is a data acquisition system designed by TecQuipment, and it works across multiple products, okay? The VDAS itself is free of charge, okay? The software is free, but of course you would need to purchase the hardware, which is the hub and all the connectivity. It's designed for ease of use and understanding, all right? So there are many user-friendly features, such as the options for large displays, and you can select either analog or digital displays. So it makes the whole process of gathering data easy and reliable. So some of our experiments, Dion, can take maybe 2 or 3 days. If we're doing fatigue testing or rotating fatigue, it could take 3 days for that sample to break. And we can capture every half second, every 2.5 seconds, every sample data point in that process. Then afterwards, we can then export the data into Microsoft Excel. You can delete all the nuisance readings like at the beginning and at the end, and be left with the pure data, which students can actually take away with them on a memory stick. They can then manipulate it. They can do the graphs. They can look at the Hooke's law, elastic to plastic graphs, etc. So it just gives a very reliable method for getting the data. And the beauty of it is many of the experiments you can actually perform on your own with VDAS, knowing that it's all the information is being stored. There's no need to grab your pen and paper in the hope that you're just lucky enough to capture the key points. So it just brings an extra dimension and value to an experiment, Dion.
I wonder if that's going to play more of a role when we talk about having students in labs during COVID-19, respecting the 2-meter distance.
Oh yeah.
Whether
Yeah,
it's going to be a heavier reliance on that stuff rather than somebody else moving in closer and taking readings and getting into somebody's space.
Yeah, I've got several VDAS systems actually.
Right.
You know, I do a lot of material testing in our materials lab at Trafford College, and one thing we do, I could talk about this all day, but we go into one of the tensile testing pieces of equipment that we have. We've got a VDAS system on that, and we've got a VDAS system on the Torsional Tester. Now, basically, for anybody who's not extremely technical who's listening, what happens is we've got load cells that are on the pieces of equipment. Now, a load cell is basically something that measures a change in, gives a digital readout of change in resistance when a force is applied to it. And it'll give a different resistance reading. Now, what that piece of equipment that we're alluding to there, the bench mounted version, that's what we've got. That converts that digital reading from the load cell into a mappable signal for a laptop. So on your laptop or in a computer in another room or on a network or virtually, you can have one person in a lab doing the torsional test. So I can be in a lab on my own doing the torsional test, and I can have 100 people logging on remotely that can watch the digital recordings being acquired and being converted into a graph while a camera is watching the test take place on the torsional test system. So it's something that is exactly what we're putting into use for. And on later this week, I'll be going up doing a 12-hour recording. Albeit we'll have to play it back in fast forward of a creep test. So yeah, that's it. When you mentioned that system, and I thought, brilliant. That's exactly what I'm using.
Yeah. I think we've just touched on something. So I've got a question for you, Oliver. What's the plural of VDAS? If you've got multiple VDAS, what is it?
Well, with my English ability, I'd say VDASes, but it's not, is it? Go on.
Is it VDASes or VDI?
Go on, Dave. You're going to have to tell me that one.
Go on. Let's ask the oracle, Dion.
Oh, let the audience tell us.
Gosh, ask the audience. I would go.
Oh, VDI's a bit.
VDI sounds wrong, doesn't it?
Come on.
I'd go with
VDAS is what I'm going with.
Prefer the sound of VDASs, but whether it's technically grammatically correct.
I'll go with VDASs, but with a Wigan accent, I doubt I'm right about English.
Yeah. I just thought I'd throw that in. But it's good to know that we're thinking about the same, thing with the remote learning and the safe distance learning. VDAS could come into its own. Yeah,
it is. It's that example that I've just given you is exactly how we're using it.
When you've got it all set up, could you talk to Dion about maybe capturing this? It would be good for both of us.
Of course I can.
If we could see this in action, this could be a good reference for some of our other customers,
Yeah, of course. No. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure I can swap it for a good discount on our next product.
We can't commit to anything, Oliver.
Not on camera.
Yeah. Let's just put our politicians' head off. I'm glad you asked that question, Mrs. Housewife. It's a question I've been meaning to answer for a long time.
We've got our viewer. In fact, our sales and marketing director has chipped in here, not to put the kibosh on the discounts, but he has come to clarify on the VDASs versus VDI. And he says it's VDI. Trust me.
VDI.
VDI is classy. It's classy.
It's classy. Okay.
I'll just email marketing and tell them to change it. It's a joke.
Right. Okay. So I'm losing track of where we are. We've talking about all the VDI systems that you'll be using there at Trafford College and how people can be using those for their for their not distance learning, I guess socially distanced learning.
Yeah.
Um,
Blended.
Splendid, yes. Now, Oliver, let's come back to you and talk about, you are a man on a mission to better yourself continually, by the sounds of it, because yes, you know, you've changed your career and swapped around, but you're not happy with that, are you? You're doing a master's now.
Yeah, doing a master's in engineering at Bolton University, rather. Yeah, it's and yeah, when I started at Trafford College, it was the last place I worked doing a master's degree. I realised I'd not done a qualification for a couple of years, and I thought there was something missing. There was something unusual, because I've spent every year of my life doing qualifications apart from 2. So I know I'll do a master's degree. Now, what I wanted to do I had to do 1 day a week of studying every so often. And, you know, like Bolton accommodated my job very well, but my last job wouldn't accommodate my master's, if you will. It just didn't fit together. Trafford College presented me with the opportunity to take on a position there, and they would accommodate my master's degree and make a contribution towards it, which we did. And that's one thing at Trafford College. We do support all the staff, you know, with professional progression. You know, it's an open door to you, giving suggestions, and we're always willing to work with you. I'm not saying that just because I work for them. I'm saying it because, you know, that's how I generally feel. And through my experience, it's absolutely brilliant how we treat the staff. Now, so they allowed me to take a day off to do my studying of my master's degree, time to study. Initially just went there as a lecturer, and I thought, right, Oliver, stick to lecturing. Don't get put into management. I normally just drift into, I normally end up in management no matter where I am. So I end up into management. So as soon as I start there, the opportunity came for me to progress into a management position, which I want to do my master's degree. And then they changed the offer around a bit, and I had realised I was being line managed by someone called Mark Harris, who's been, and I hope Mark's listening now, because he's been inspirational and helped me do everything I've done in my current position, and he's taught me more than I've learned ever about management. Really been lucky to work for him. So I moved into this management position with the aim of expanding and growing a higher education department within engineering, which we've done. And we do, like I said, with 98% of our students are employed. We've got learners coming from a very wide berth around the college. And yeah, it's very successful. And I'm just in my last years of my master's now, and just about managing to keep juggling all those balls.
Wow, you sound like you've got a hell of a lot on your plate there.
Yeah, that's why my back garden's not been done yet.
No painting for you then?
No.
Dave, the master painter. Well, it's quite inspirational what you've achieved, and that you continue to take on new challenges. I would just want to remind everybody that we are, if you're watching this live, you can put questions in the chat box. If you're watching this on demand, then please do post your questions, just put them in the comment box below, and we'll come back to you in due course. So if you've got any questions about how to teach physically and blended learning with COVID-19, Oliver's really had lots of experience there. As we can say, he's already got students in college at the moment, starting this week, and having really pushed forward with the blended learning already. Then we've got Digital Dave here, and Dave is still here to answer your technical questions. Dave,
Dion.
Let me think. Next question. I've run a blank, you know. I run a blank. If I was to say you can't choose engines and you can't choose aerodynamics, because they're your 2 favourite topics, what would be your 3rd most favourite topic in engineering teaching?
Materials, because we break things on purpose, Dion. We get to stretch.
Yes, Oliver was talking about that.
Yeah.
We get to stretch things. We can stretch, we can twist, we can bend. So that I like anything that moves in the lab is dynamic, exciting for me. But yeah, materials is always satisfying to see something break in front of you, and then you can get into hardness testing as well, which is an interesting subject. But aerodynamics, gas turbines, thermodynamics, it's all very interesting subject matter, made more so when you've got equipment in front of you to prove the data, to prove the theory is correct. So yeah, I'd say materials.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Oliver's nodding in agreement there as well.
Well, motor vehicle and materials go hand in hand. If you look at all the different types of materials that are involved with the motor industry these days, who'd have thought it? If you said 20 years ago there'd be road cars on a production line being made of carbon fibre, you'd have gone. And how long's BMW been using carbon fibre now in the production cars?
Yeah.
4 or 5 years, maybe longer than 5 years. I don't know, but there's nothing I like more than getting material. You see, because when the family business went into the performance tuning side of things, ultimately you want more performance out of something. You're putting more stress on all the materials that are used to create the engine. So I started thinking, right, okay, we've got to start improving the quality of the components we use. What's different between performance versions and the normal versions? And it's always an improvement in material that's being made out of. And what are them properties? So tensile testing of carbon fibers, different alloys, different steels is something that I have a real passion for. And I always get samples from the motor vehicle production to test in the materials lab at college and show the learners and go through the learners. While I'm at Bolton University, Keating Supercars is based at Bolton University. So when I was going into Bolton University, I go into the Keating Supercar where we're producing the vehicle in the lab, get samples of their carbon fibre that they make the body and the chassis out of, and then I'm doing tensile tests on that weave of carbon fibre that they use for their vehicles, but I'm doing it in the lab at Trafford College. And I've got something to relay to the learners. This piece of carbon fibre here, this sheet of carbon fibre, this K weave is on that vehicle over there, and show them a vehicle that they're producing at Keating Supercars. So
yeah,
it's tangible. You don't want to go into a materials test or an education without giving it a real life example of where it's used.
Well, I was way ahead of BMW. About 15 years ago, I bought a Reliant Scimitar.
Oh yeah,
a V6 Ford Essex engine, which was absolutely lethal. It was 0 to casualty in 6 seconds, but the whole thing was made of fiberglass, so it effectively had no earth. On cars you can just bolt an earth anywhere, but there was no earthing point because it's made of plastic.
Yeah,
it taught me a lot, and that was a fun car, but absolutely lethal. Such a light car with a very powerful Ford engine in it. The V6 Essex engine was famous, as you know.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you, gentlemen. A question from David Spedding now.
David, I know David.
Okay, great. I think David might even have joined us on Instagram, so he's come back for more.
Yeah,
brilliant.
He must be sick of me talking.
Oh, he's got a question, so you must want to hear more from you.
Right.
David's question is, as both gents have an interest in motorsport and performance engines, can I ask their thoughts on the move to electric propulsion in motorsport?
Oh,
Personal professional opinion. That's it's difficult. Right. Go on, Dave, you go first.
I better keep my thoughts to myself. I'm a petrol head. Okay. So whatever technology comes, I'm always going to be biased. I'm old-fashioned. I'm old school. In my opinion, there's nothing in the world that will ever sound as good as a V8. I've had two myself. I love the technology that's come along. It's phenomenal what these electric cars can do in terms of performance with the Porsche and the McLaren. But I'm just stuck in the dark ages. I think it's great, but it will never change my mind of what really excites me in motorsport. That's just me though. Okay.
Yeah, my personal opinion. Well, I've got a car in the back keep in my garage, which is my favourite car, and I won't sell it. And my brother's got the exact same car, which are Tommy Mackinnon Mitsubishi Evolutions. Mine's running just shy of 400 horsepower. My brother's is running, well, we can't measure it because we can't get traction on a rolling road. But, you know, there's some considerable cost to each on it to empower. Now, they spit flames and they're very fast and they're unbelievable to watch. And to think back in the day when they were flying through rally stages, spitting flames and deafening the spectators.
Yeah.
If that was an electric car doing that around a rally stage, you'd watch it once and go, well, that's a good gimmick. That looks all right. But you wouldn't watch it again. Yeah. You know, per my personal opinion, you can't, and with Formula One these days, I watched the 2004 Formula One Grand Prix at British Grand Prix. And when you're within a mile of a Grand Prix and your ears feel like they're going to bleed, you cannot beat that, I'm afraid.
No, I get it. Like the Americans say, there ain't no replacement for displacement.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. You need to feel an engine resonating through you, and then you don't look at an electric car in the same way.
Yeah.
So I will say, petrol big as an eye revenue as possible.
You two are clearly petrol heads.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've got Bruno here saying faster and greener. You know, there's the need to push forward technology, and maybe what motor manufacturers need to think about is, you know, you talk about the experience, the vibrations of when the engine's really going fast and stuff, and the noise, the whole sensory experience that you get from that you lack with an electric car, because it's also calm and quiet. And you don't necessarily want calm and quiet. Sometimes you want exciting and fast.
Can I use a little bit of a comparison here? Right. A friend of mine was telling me last week about the new Tesla. And he's got the top of a range one. It'll do 0 to 60 in 2 point something seconds. Right, okay. Now that's fast. In any shape or form, that's fast. Right. Now, this is a comparison I put it to. If you go on a roller coaster, it can be the fastest roller coaster in the world, right? An electric roller coaster. You go on that, and if you got it 10 times in a row, no matter how fast that is, on the 11th time, it's not as good, anywhere near as good. All right.
No.
And that's type of a feeling you get with electric cars. It's good once, and that looks brilliant. That's amazing. Electric vehicle being able to do that. But that's it. That's it.
Yeah, like I said, they may be fast, but are they powerful?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, we've got some more comments here. David Spedding's come back and said he drove a Prius many years ago and was impressed at the time. But nothing more recently, though. He's excited about the technology coming into motorsport, even if it's expensive, the noise. So that's his perspective. Andy Ratcliffe, Dave, he said you drove a hybrid hire car. What were your experience?
Oh my God! Yeah,
there a story to
it. Street kids just gone down the drain.
I think I had to go to a customer in the south of England. I don't know. Anyway, they gave me this. It's just a Duracell on wheels. I mean, I did not enjoy the experience because there wasn't one.
It was lacking in experience. That was it. It was just memorable.
Yeah, I just forgot about it the next day.
Bruno's come up with a very good point, and Bruno's clearly the green viewer here. He said you can listen to your radio if you're driving an electric car. Personally, I counter that. I say just turn your radio up louder.
Yeah.
But you know, there is ear damage and stuff. You know.
In my Mitsubishi, I have no intention. In my Mitsubishi, I was stupid and spent quite a lot of money putting a sound system in it to never listen to it because I just want to hear the engine and the exhaust, and the turbo, very sweet circulatory valve. I'd sooner listen to all that, to be honest. But there is a place for electric vehicles. But my personal opinion, it will never replace. I'll never replace a combustion engine within motorsport and for sensory joy. But there is a place for them. I see a big place, and we could talk more on this tomorrow in the engine thing. is where, you know, should they be used for wagons? Is there a big option there for electric wagons, being it because, you know, excellent motors are a lot better at using torque and carrying load than they are at sensory overload reasons. So is there a place for buses and wagons, and like we did with trains? Yeah, I feel so. Yeah, I think there is. And in some element cars, but in motorsport, not fully electric. Combination, yeah, not fully electric. I don't watch Formula E very often, put it that way.
No. Is that a good answer for you then, Dion? You know,
I think that's a wonderful debate that we've had there.
Yeah.
So both of you is stay with the petrol, stick with the radio, turn it up louder, or don't listen to the radio at all and listen to your engine.
Yeah.
Hey, Oliver, before we finish, I know somebody who actually shifted a car because it made a squeaky noise.
Oh, no, don't do it to me publicly to kill me.
Yeah.
I've gone safely with a Volvo now.
Yeah, it was diagnosed as having a squeak, so Dion got rid of the car.
You must have a lot more money than me. Oh, I really dislike squeaks.
No, gentlemen.
I'm sorry, Dion. I'm sorry.
We'll stop ganging up on you now.
Before it gets out of hand.
Oh, we're going into a tunnel.
Well, we're going to be back tomorrow, so I dread to think what you're going to see tomorrow. In fact, I dread to think. I'm very much looking forward to being back with Oliver and Dave tomorrow. We've had great fun today, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. I think you've enjoyed it, haven't you, Oliver?
Yeah, I loved every minute. Yeah.
Good, brilliant. And Dave loves this as well, don't you? It's a highlight of our week.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
it certainly is. Yeah.
So thank you very much, everybody around the world who's been watching us today. Don't forget to join us tomorrow for the Engines webinar at 1 p.m. Next week, we are back with the Q&A session, and we are talking to Ram Shankar. Ram is an engineer and entrepreneur. He's talking about sustainability in product design and how that affects the engineering educators, what they need to be keeping in mind for sustainable products going forward. So join us next week for that. We'll be back next week, and we'll be talking about VDAS. We touched on VDAS today, and we'll be coming back and talking more. We'll hopefully be doing a live demo of VDAS on a product at the same time.
That's the plan, folks.
That is the plan.
Brilliant.
So we will wrap up for today. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Oliver.
No problem.
Dave, and thank you, viewers. Bye.
Thanks, then, folks. See you
Bye.
tomorrow.
See you later.